a couple of years before, and I decided that my limited recollections would do, so I went ahead with trial by jury. This proved to be a non-Platonic choice in more ways than one, since in the chorus I met an alto with a lovely smile. When I teach a great books course today, I tell my students that I have visual proof that reading Plato can change your life, and I show a photo of my wife, Laura, and myself, 3.5 decades after that memorable autumn, with our 3 kids at our older daughter's college graduation. Our life's journey began thanks to reading Plato, or more precisely, thanks to my having read Plato. We never know when a book may prove to be a life-changing experience. Since then, I've devoted myself to exploring ancient and modern literatures. Long focused on a handful of European literatures, the realm of world literature now encompasses a host of classic works, from the Epic of Gilgamesh to the Tale of Genji and the Mayan Popol Vuh, that were never found on syllabi outside specialized area studies programs, while the Nobel and Booker Prizes are given to contemporary writers as varied as China's Mo Yan, Turkey's Orhan Pamuk, Poland's Olga Tokarczuk, and Oman's Joka Alharti. I've written a good deal about these changes, but apart from a book on Gilgamesh, I've addressed myself to students and scholars. More recently, however, I began to think about how I might introduce a broader readership to the expansive landscape of literature today, both in Europe and beyond. What kind of story to tell, and how to give it a satisfying shape? Literary works are the product of 2 very different worlds, the world of the writer's experience and the world of books. These offer the resources that writers use and transform in order to process their often chaotic and painful experience into lasting and pleasurable form. The present project is no exception. It draws on my experiences in giving talks in some 50 countries around the world, and it equally takes shape from a variety of literary explorations and fictional adventures. The first movie I ever saw at age 3 in 1956 may have been the widescreen version of Jules Verne's Around the World in 80 Days, starring David Niven as the obsessively punctual Phileas Fogg and the Mexican comedian Cantinflas as the servant Jean Passepartout. I also had in mind Harold Bloom's eloquent, idiosyncratic paean to the great books, the Western canon. Though to survey today's global landscape, I wanted a larger cast of characters than his select set of 26 writers. Jules Verne's tally of 80 seemed about right, a capacious but still manageable number of works to discuss. Drawing on my experiences abroad, I decided to loosely mimic Phileas Fogg's route from London eastward through Asia, across the Pacific to the Americas, finally back to London. I would recall and often actually revisit a group of particularly memorable locations and the books they associate with them, both to see how literature enters the world and to think about how the world bleeds into literature. In January of 2020, I was plotting my itinerary, building it around upcoming talks and conferences. Then came COVID-19. I managed to get in a trip to Muscat in February, but in rapid succession, events got canceled in Chicago, Tokyo, the Netherlands, Heidelberg, Belgrade. So much for going around the world anytime soon. But then again, what was I thinking? It was Phileas Fogg, not his creator, who traveled the world by steamship, train, hot air balloon, elephant, and stagecoach. Verne never ventured beyond Europe throughout his long life, and he didn't even set foot outside Paris during the months in 1872 when he wrote his novel. He didn't need to. He could encounter the world in his cosmopolitan world capital. The idea for the book came to him in a Paris cafe, where he read a newspaper account of new railway lines and steamship routes that could make it possible for someone to go around the world in 80 days. Sitting in cafes wasn't going to be in the cards for me under COVID-19 restrictions, but then another literary model came to mind, Javier de Maistre's little masterpiece, Voyage autour de ma chambre, Voyage around my room. De Maistre was a young French aristocrat serving in the Piedmontese army in 1790, when he was punished for taking part in a duel. The judge sentenced him to house arrest for 42 days, really a quarantine, in its root sense of 40 days of sequestration, to give time for the fever of his impulsive anger to subside. Unable to spend his customary evenings drinking with friends, gambling at cards, and flirting with Italian enchantresses, de Maistre decided to treat his room as a miniature world. Parodying the grand tour that wealthy young men of his era would undertake around Europe, the 18th century equivalent of a gap year, he wrote a series of vivid vignettes based on everything around him in his room, from books to paintings to furniture. I could do the same, and so I invited readers to travel with me on the World Wide Web for 16 weeks, from May to August 2020.